What's up, y'all? It's Dr. Paul with Liberty Hill Comics, where I share my passion and over 40 years of experience comic book collecting, investing, and conservation with you. Today, we're continuing our comic book conservation project on this copy of Powerman and Iron Fist number 73, the Rom SpaceKnight crossover, which is the first meeting of Rom, Luke Cage, and Iron Fist. Published by Marvel Comics September of 1981, it's got this great Frank Miller cover. This copy belongs to friend of the channel, Mike Michalowski, whose YouTube handle is Hugo Danner. Mike asked me to have a look at this newsstand copy from his collection and see what I thought we could do with it. And I decided it might be a good project to demonstrate how our conservation techniques can be applied to modern books. In Episode 1, we did a thorough assessment and developed a game plan for this book. Essentially, we determined that while this comic book presented pretty well at arm's length, it had some flaws, including color-breaking spine ticks, soiling, and stains, that would result in the book grading out in the 5.0 to 6.0 range as it sits. Our hope is to address the soiling and stains through dry and wet cleaning methods and stain mitigation if necessary. This comic book appears to have 7.0 to 8.0 potential if we're successful in our endeavors. In Episode 2, we dry cleaned the cover, and I went over in detail what methods and materials I use, including when and how I use this block eraser that most comic book cleaners will tell you is a no-no. I've created a playlist for this conservation series, so check that out if you missed either of these episodes and want to view them before watching today's video. In today's episode, we're going to be wet cleaning this cover and working on these stains. And to do that, we first have to disassemble this comic. Always start with clean and dry hands, and then find yourself the centerfold, because that's where the staples are folded over, and we need to remove the staples. I'm using two tools here from Immaculate Comics, the Capable Staple Tool and the Flawless Staple Tool. You don't have to use these tools, but what you do need to do, if you don't want to damage the paper when you're removing the staples, is stabilize the paper so that nothing is moving other than just the staple arm that you want to bend up first. And then second, make sure you don't mar the staple. So if you're using, say, a metal pick or something else, it'll actually leave scratches in the staple, especially because these staples have a little bit of patina to them, and it will very easily mar that patina. And it'll make it obvious to anybody that looks carefully that you've been messing with the staples. And that could be a red flag. It could just be that some collectors prefer a book that hasn't been opened up. So we'd like to leave as little evidence of our passing through here as possible, which is why I don't want to mar the staples, and I certainly don't want to make the staple holes in the paper any larger. The other tool you'll see me using here is just a plastic block of Delrin that I machined with a little hole in it. It just gives me a bigger purchase on the entire book to stabilize more paper than the Capable Staple Tool does. Next up, I have a piece of painter's tape. I have it labeled T&B for top and bottom, and we're going to remove these staples. I like to do push and pull. Push a little bit on the prongs on the inside with my right hand, and pull with my left hand. I'll usually just take my thumbnail and try to pinch that flat part of the staple. I'm going to keep the orientation top and bottom. And I'm going to store them conveniently on this piece of painter's tape while we work on the book. One down, let's get the bottom staple out. Again, push and pull gently. You can see that's color breaking spine tick, so where the book just wants to flop when you open it. There's not much can be done about that. Alright, two staples out. I'll make sure they're well adhered to the tape, And then I'll place this tape safely out of the way, away from the rest of my work so nothing will catch on it. And the inner wrap should now be free from the cover. I'll remove my ring light and remove the inner pages and place them in some Mylar and keep them safe while we work on the cover. Let's have a quick look at some stills against some Bristol paper. You can see the color here is a little more correct than it is in the video. It's a little bit creamy, a little off-white. When we look at a close-up of these stains, it's going to be a good challenge. I'm not sure yet if we're going to be able to completely get these out without any evidence, so this will be fun. Now that the comic is disassembled and we have some good images of the current state of the cover, we can begin wet cleaning. The overall plan is to first do a conservative wet clean and deacidification. Then we'll evaluate the stains and see if we need to take more aggressive measures to deal with them. The first wash will be an aqueous bath consisting of warm tap water with 25% saturated calcium hydroxide and 1 drop of Triton X100 per 100 milliliters of solution. Here's the recipe for half a liter, which is a good amount to completely cover the page in my photo development tray. If you want more detailed instructions on how to make this solution and the rationale behind it, including references to the peer-reviewed paper conservation literature, check out my video titled Advanced Cleaning, Deacidification, and Resizing Methods, which I'll provide a link to here. So let's get started. I have my heater stir plate, and I'm going to add 375 mils of warm tap water in my magnetic stir bar. And I'll turn the stir bar on, turn the heat plate on. Now you don't need a fancy stir plate. You can just use warm tap water, and you can just stir the Triton X100 in with a spoon or a spatula, something like that. But I have this and it's convenient for me, so I use it. Now you want to wait until you're just about ready to put this solution over your page before you add your calcium hydroxide. The reason why is the heat will cause a chemical reaction and you get calcium carbonate, which isn't a big deal, but it's a little bit less effective. So here's my saturated calcium hydroxide solution. And I'm going to pour 125 mils of this. And you'll see there is still some salt at the bottom. That's how we know it's saturated. We're just going to pour off some of the clear solution at the top. This jar is a little bit less than 500 mils, so it doesn't quite all fit in. I'm going to pour the rest over my photo development tray. Now my photo development tray right now has 2 sheets of Hollytex in it. And unfortunately, I kind of goofed. I was setting up the lighting and trying to capture all of the methods here for you. I should already have the comic book sheet between the 2 pages of Hollytex, and I don't. So, I'm human after all. I made an error. We'll just correct that now. So what I'm going to need to do is separate the 2 sheets of Hollytex here. Again, don't do this. Have the page already between the 2 sheets. But if you do this, here's how you recover. I have 1 sheet of the Hollytex up, and I'm going to place the cover in. You get to stare at the back of my tricep for a little bit here. And I'm going to have to spend a little bit of time now flattening the Hollytex and getting everything spread out nicely here so that we can get a uniform layer of the solution on the paper. Again, this is sized paper, so it's going to resist. It's slightly hydrophobic. It's going to resist getting wetted initially until we overcome that hydrophobicity and we get it saturated. The Hollytex helps with that by keeping, it's very wettable and has a huge surface area due to all the fibers. so it keeps the solution in close contact with the paper. I'm going to use my little plastic spatula to try to remove any air bubbles from underneath the sheet, and again smooth out and get the page even in between the two layers of Hollytex. That's what I'm doing here now. It's sort of just not distributed evenly inside the rectangle that is the Hollytex, so I'm trying to reposition it now. Again, all of this is just to recover from me forgetting to have the page in there first. And this is going to set for 5 minutes. Second wash is going to be exactly the same as the first. If I didn't have the stains, I probably wouldn't do this second wash, but I know from experience with stains like that, they're not going to be gone with one wash, so we're going to do a second wash with the Triton X100, same as the first one. So once 5 minutes has passed, I will go ahead and remove this page. I like to put it on some paper towels during the changeover. This helps absorb whatever fluid is in the Hollytex sandwich, and in so doing we'll get a more thorough rinse with each step. This is a consequence of me again not having put them into the tray correctly. The Hollytex is just a little bit misaligned, so I spent a moment trying to align a little better. I use this technique where I roll the sandwich off the edge of the photo development tray, and that really helps to, again, remove as much of the previous solution as possible so we get a thorough rinse in between each of these washes. I'll pour this solution off and we can take a picture of it and review that later. And then we'll put our new solution. This is already pre-mixed, the Triton X100 and the warm water. I've just added the calcium hydroxide at the last moment again, removed my stir bar. You can see we have some bubbles in there, which shows you that I have a surfactant in the solution. And now we're ready to place the page back in. It already looks quite a bit better. It is difficult to tell when the page is wet, just how much stain removal has occurred, or tanning removal for that matter. Because the page is somewhat translucent, you can see the graphics from the other side. So we'll reset stopwatch for another 5-minute wash. And by the magic of video editing, 5 minutes has elapsed, and we are ready for our rinse. The rinse is the same as the 2 washes, minus the surfactant, the Triton X100. So it's just 25% saturated calcium hydroxide in warm tap water. So we'll follow the same procedure for removing this page from the second wash. Slide the tray out of the way so you can have a good view. Lay down some paper towel. And then I'll remove the page from the aqueous bath by gliding the Hollytex sandwich over the edge of the photo development tray, which really helps pull a lot of solution out of the page. You got a great view of my forearm there. You're welcome. I would like this to be flat because the more it's in contact with the paper towel, the better the absorption is going to happen. Again, the better rinse effect we'll get. So I don't spend a lot of time on it, but I will take a moment to remove any ripples. This bath was essentially clear, so I'm not going to bother collecting it or taking any pictures for review later. So I'm just going to pour it off and rinse the tray out and get ready for this final rinse, which is just a deacidification wash to remove the surfactant. So I'm not going to use the fancy stir plate this time. Here's my warm tap water, and I'm going to add my calcium hydroxide, and I'm just going to slosh them around a little bit here in the tray. Probably not necessary, but so I have a reasonable mix of the two when we're starting. Now I can add the page back to the bath. Again, the main purpose here is to remove the Triton X100, the surfactant. We don't want to leave that in the page, and it's obviously very water soluble. We used a very tiny amount. The 5 drops is just barely the critical micelle concentration, or CMC. So it's optimized just enough to give us the effect we want. And we'll start another timer. Now, after 5 minutes, it was very obviously still a stain, which is not that shocking. So I'm going to go ahead and prep. I'm going to leave the page in this calcium hydroxide solution, no reason to change it out. And I'm going to go ahead and prep to do a photo bleach concurrent with the calcium hydroxide bath. You've seen me do this before, plenty of videos you can watch for more of the details, but essentially I'll leave the page right in the photo development tray between the Hollytex. I'll place my sweater box cover that has some reflective tape on it. Now, because we're not trying to photo bleach the entire page, we're just trying to spot bleach around those stains. I'm just going to use one lamp centered right over those stains. This is my 465 nanometer blue LED, and I'm going to probably expose it for 1 to 2 hours. I checked in at 1 hour, and it looked like there was still a little bit of a stain, so I did go a full 2 hours, but I think now I took a peek. The stains are effectively gone. We're not going to know until we completely dry the page out for sure, because of that translucency when the paper is wet. So I'm going to go ahead and take the page out of the aqueous bath. Again, we leave the calcium hydroxide in. It does not require another rinse with water. As a matter of fact, it would actually be worse for the paper if we rinse the calcium hydroxide out. Studies have shown that deionized water rinse of paper actually weakens it because it makes it more susceptible to acid catalyzed hydrolysis of the cellulose chains, and it'll break down faster. So you want to leave that alkaline reserve in the paper. So I'm going straight here to cold press to dry the page out. This is just a chunk of granite that's the right size that I've repurposed from a kitchen remodel. Now, because I went straight from the pan, I have a relatively wet Hollytex sandwich. I'm going to change this out after 20-30 minutes, and then I'll change it out again after 4 to 8 hours, and again after 12 to 24 hours. After that, it'll go into my CO Masterpiece 350 between some sheets of Bristol paper to get nice and flat and dry. All right, time to look at some results. Here is the rinsate from the first wash. We knew it was a pretty bright page. We knew we didn't have a lot of tanning, very mild, sort of off-white, but we also had that stain. So not surprised here. We've seen a lot worse than this, but clearly we pulled some significant soiling out of the paper. Now for the results that matter. After 24 hours in cold press under the granite slab and another 24 hours in the seal press between some sheets of Bristol paper, here's our cover. When we attempt comic book stain removal, we'd like to use conservative archival methods that will remove the stain without damaging or weakening the paper, and without affecting the media, that is, the ink. You're never guaranteed a good result, and I will always err on the side of keeping the media and paper intact, so often we're left with a faint remnant of the stain. Usually it's faint enough that unless you know what you're looking for, you won't notice it. In this instance, I'm just absolutely over the moon with the results. I think we achieved a 100% removal of the stain while brightening up the paper just a tiny bit and keeping the inks strong and vibrant. The paper is now almost a brilliant white with no evidence of the very slight tanning that we saw in our earlier still images. I'm beyond pleased with these results, especially because we took a very conservative approach. Remember, we used no chemical bleaching here beyond the very mild bleaching effect of calcium hydroxide, which has been demonstrated to strengthen rather than weaken paper, as other bleaching agents like hydrogen peroxide or chloramine T. And we used a duration and intensity of photo bleaching that has been shown to be well tolerated and does not damage paper. I sincerely appreciate you joining me today for this episode of this modern comic book conservation project, and hope you can apply some of these techniques to your projects. Most of the conservation materials I use today are available from Amazon in the affiliate links in the video description if you need any of them for your own projects. Next episode, we'll reassemble this comic book, give it a press, and review the final results. If you enjoyed this video, please take a few seconds to give it a thumbs up, leave me a comment, and please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Until next time, take care of one another.